The second labor was to go to Lerna and kill a creature with 9 heads called the Hydra, which lived in a swamp there. This was exceedingly hard to do because one of the heads was immortal and the others almost as bad, inasmuch as when Hercules chopped off one, 2 grew up instead. However, he was helped by his nephew, Iolaus, who had brought him a burning brand with which he seared the neck as he cut each head off, so that it could not sprout again. When all had been chopped off, he disposed of the one that was immortal by burying it secretly under a great rock. The third labor was to bring back alive a stag with horns of gold and sacred to Artemis, which lived in the forest of Carine Etia. He could have killed it easily, but to take it alive was another matter, and he hunted it a whole year before he succeeded. The fourth labor was to capture a great boar, which had its lair on Mount Erymanthus. He chased the beast from one place to another until it was exhausted. Then he drove it into the deep snow and trapped it. The fifth labor was to clean the Augean stables in a single day. Augeas had thousands of cattle, and their stalls had not been cleared out for years. Hercules diverted the courses of 2 rivers and made them flow through the stables in a great flood that washed out the filth in no time at all. The sixth labor was to drive away Stymphalian birds, which were a plague to the people of Stymphalus because of their enormous numbers. He was helped by Athena to drive them out of their coverts. As they flew up, he shot them. The seventh labor was to go to Crete and fetch from there the beautiful savage bull that Poseidon had given Minos. Hercules mastered him, put him in a boat, and brought him to Eurystheus. The eighth labor was to get the man-eating mares of King Diomedes of Thrace. Hercules slew Diomedes first, and then drove off the mares unopposed. The ninth labor was to bring back the girdle of Hippolyta, the queen of the Amazons. When Hercules arrived, she met him kindly and told him she would give him the girdle. But Hera stirred up trouble. She made the Amazons think that Hercules was going to carry off their queen, and they charged down on a ship. Hercules, without a thought of how kind Hippolyta had been, without any thought at all, instantly killed her, taking it for granted that she was responsible for the attack. He was able to fight off the others and get away with the girdle. The 10th labor was to bring back the cattle of Geryon, who was a monster with 3 bodies living on Erythea, a western island. On his way there, Hercules reached the land at the end of the Mediterranean, and he set up as a memorial of his journey 2 great rocks called the Pillars of Hercules, now Gibraltar and Ceuta. He got the oxen and took them to Mycenae. The 11th labor was the most difficult of all so far. It was to bring back the golden apples of Hesperides, and he did not know where they were to be found. Atlas, who bore the vault of heaven upon his shoulders, was the father of the Hesperides, so Hercules went to him and asked him to get the apples for him. he offered to take upon himself the burden of the sky while Atlas was away. Atlas, seeing a chance of being relieved forever from his heavy task, gladly agreed. He came back with the apples, but he did not give them to Hercules. He told Hercules he could keep on holding up the sky, for Atlas himself would take the apples to Eurystheus. On this occasion, Hercules had only his wife to trust to. He'd given all his strength to supporting that mighty load. He was successful, but because of Atlas's stupidity rather than his own cleverness. He agreed to Atlas's plan, but asked him to take the sky back for just a moment so that Hercules could put a pad on his shoulders to ease the pressure. Atlas did so, and Hercules picked up the apples and went off. The 12th labor was the worst of all. It took him down to the lower world, and it was then that he freed Theseus from the chair for forgetfulness. His task was to bring Cerberus, the three-headed dog, up from Hades. Pluto gave him permission, provided Hercules used no weapons to overcome him. He could use his hands only. Even so, he forced the terrible monster to submit to him. He lifted him and carried him all the way up to the earth and onto Mycenae. Eurystheus very sensibly did not want to keep him and made Hercules carry him back. This was his last labor, and the illustration coming out of the cave that has gradation, and sort of a rocky pathway that's, that looks like a pile of rocks, more or less, is what Hercules stands on when he holds this three-headed dog with a snake for a tail. And I was thinking that this whole thing was maybe, well, I mean, it does sound like kind of a sort of a zodiacal sort of thing with its 12 and stuff, but it's not really in an order. But perhaps the order has some, a mystical meaning or function.